Hello, hello. Thank you. Cool. So images and videos and generally media are part of our everyday web experience, but how can we take advantage of it from an e-commerce perspective and make sure we're delivering the best experience we can? So who am I? I'm Colby Fayock. I'm the one hugging BB-8 and Kylo Ren up there. I work with the dev community as a developer experience engineer at Cloudinary. You can find me anywhere on the web by just Googling my name, as I'm the only one in the world. So we're going to start off at the top with the king of e-commerce, Amazon. The first thing we see when we load this page is it's covered in media. It's a good way to show the available products that we have on the site, so it makes a lot of sense. This is the landing page for their fashion store, which likely looks very similar to a lot of top-level landing pages that you might have seen throughout the web, but they have a lot of large images that are intended to show the available products. As we scroll down, we also have the ability to see the available categories and the images that represent each and every one of those categories. Once we dive in, though, we start to see a grid of images. Like here on our product listing page, we can see that the easiest way to browse a large amount of products is to simply have them in a list in a grid. So we put them in that grid that people can scroll through. And once we're on our product details page, we can get a closer look and be able to choose our options. Ideally, this also means having several different angles of the product that we're trying to show. Now, not to pick on Amazon, but they're not really doing anything necessarily innovative here. I'm sure they A/B test every single minute detail of this page to make sure that it's not hurting conversion, but which we'll get to later. But all this is very practical and functional. How can we level up our media experience for creating more engaging experiences on the web? So here we have Star Cadet, where I'm a big fan of their Final Space merch. Shout out to Final Space fans out there. They take advantage of GIFs to display video-like images and product images for categories as well. It's a little bit more of a creative approach, taking a very typical static medium and making it more exciting. Glasses USA allows potential customers to get a first-hand look at what glasses actually look like on somebody's face. Buying glasses is hard. You want a pair that you're going to feel confident in. Traditionally, you'd have to kind of hope for the best and see if you can get a good return policy if you're not happy with it. But this gets us a step closer to feel like we're actually in the store. Or better yet, iBuyDirect actually gives you a real-time feed where you can virtually try on these pairs of glasses, moving around with you just like you're looking at yourself in a mirror in a store. As far as the product page goes, you still need to have the ability to showcase your products. People need to buy something and it needs to be very clear what that is. You don't want to be over creative, but like Nike here, we can use embedded video as part of that experience to get a better idea of what the fit actually looks like when you have it in person. Now, as creative as some of that is, it's still very fitting into that traditional medium. And the web is changing. So what does the future of e-commerce look like? Nike recently acquired Artifact Studios, which is a team who creates shoes and collectibles ready for the metaverse. It's similar to the collectible game that Nike has always been a part of, but now it's an investment into the digital world. And that wasn't Nike's only foray into that digital world. Nike also launched Nike Land on Roblox, which gives you an experience that allows you to connect to a digital version of Nike's HQ. They have games and sports and other community-related features. But they also have a showroom that lets you check out Nike products, giving you the ability to deck out your Roblox avatar with exclusive Nike gear. And while we still have a lot of time before this kind of thing becomes super mainstream, we're already starting to see really creative solutions, and there's a lot of change happening and it's happening fast. But let's talk about some of the more practical ways that we can look at our media today. And while the metaverse is likely coming at us fast, we still need to maintain an effective Web 2.0. While for some of you, this might look like an easy one, it's super important to make sure you're providing large, clear images of the products that you're trying to sell. It's especially helpful when you have more than one angle or more than one wide single shot of that product. People care deeply about the products that they're trying to purchase. So you want to make sure they have a clear up-close look at what they're getting. And we can't have e-commerce reference shots without Apple. Apple does a really great job at showcasing large detailed imagery, but that's always not enough to make sure that the features are actually clear. So they make the extra point to highlight each and every one of those features, diagramming the different points of their product, such as the potentially confusing use of 3 separate lenses on an iPhone, where here they're able to point out the differences between the 3. So while it's important to have those clear images, which Wise does a really good job at, lifestyle photos are a way to place your product in people's everyday lives. Whether the potential customer knows it or not, this helps them to imagine how that product would actually fit into their everyday lives. So how could these Wise headphones help you out while you're enjoying some music in bed? They're so comfortable that you might even forget that you're wearing them. ThinkGeek, a company that I used to work for, sold cool things on the web from your favorite fandoms. They took this a step further, where not only did they show these products in a real life scenario, they showed it with a fun twist. So you can fully imagine yourself as Darth Vader baking with your R2-D2 measuring cups. But it makes an extra step, makes a difference going this extra step because it helps build that connection and relationship with your audience. Upgrading the media from static images, we have video, which can help drive more context between the visuals in a short period of time, along with audio to help provide those verbal descriptions. But we can do better than just popping up a video inside of the page. Like my examples earlier, we can use video in ways that will add to the experience without taking away from the existing one. Under Armour instantly sets the tone when you hit their homepage. Their audience is full of athletes, so this instantly gets them in a good way to right into the gym so they get hyped up and want to buy all those products. And we can even make that video shoppable. As the video plays, just like anything else, we can make it interactive, allowing visitors to actually check out what product it is that they're showing in the video at the time. That way you don't have to scavenge the site looking for that one where it's usually at the end of the grid. We all know that feeling, but usually this is a good way to be able to provide those products in real time in the video that they're watching. So enough of looking at a bunch of pictures. See what I did there? Well, how can we actually take this and make it work from a developer perspective? So in reality, a lot of these answers might not include technical solutions. Like in order to showcase large clear images, we first got to have those large clear images. But make sure that you're actually showing them on the page, and make sure that you're not over compressing them or showing them as little tiny thumbnails, which isn't going to help anybody. But people need to be able to have a clear look at what that product is. So take advantage of those big images. But you can take that a step further. You can allow people to zoom in on those images so that they can actually see what it looks like right on the page, avoiding the unnecessary steps to take them off the page. There's a lot of great zoom-based libraries out there to give us a help, but React Inner Image Zoom is one that can help, similar to that Uniqlo experience, or there's a lot of other traditional modal experiences, but they don't always give you a good experience for what you would expect in e-commerce. You could also try to replicate this on your own. For example, once Zoom is enabled, if somebody's clicking through it, we can dynamically grab the cursor position and we can update the image's position relative to its container. Well, this is a very simple example. It showcases the basics of how we can start to achieve that UX. Providing point-based details is both a little bit easier and a little bit trickier. Adding some text overlaid on an image isn't too bad, but each one of these lines are pointing precisely to the lens. And while we can do that pretty easily for one viewport size, it starts to get tricky when realistically most of us are trying to build responsive experiences. Again, this is a simple and incomplete representation, but we can start to see that by using the resize listener and setting the coordinates based on the original width and height, where here it's percentage based, we can dynamically update the position as it's resizing. Lifestyle imageries is another one of those things. Unless you're also a photographer, you're going to need creative support and imagery for this. But we can still see that how we can provide nice banners like this without having to embed the text on the image. By including the text actually on the page, we're helping both search engines read that text as well as accessibility. Also, it's a little bit easier to make responsive so that the text is actually readable on every device. As far as video is concerned, yeah, I would imagine that you're just thinking, I'm going to go ahead and slap a GIF in there. And you could, but GIFs are absolutely huge. Well, they can be absolutely huge, especially if you want them big and high quality like you would want on your homepage. We can instead take advantage of actual video on the page where, depending on the size, you're going to get a lot better file size results. Using the HTML video element, we can hide on all the controls and the player UI and set it to automatically play in loop, so you're really getting that same GIF-like experience while you're providing a better experience for people. Now, when leveling up your video and making it shoppable, this starts to get a little bit more complex, and you're likely using a custom player for this kind of thing. But again, we can start to think about how we could actually solve something like this. Maybe we have a custom video player, and we define our products, and we define the clickable nodes and where they are inside of the video, like which nodes link to what specific products, so that when somebody clicks it, it's going to be interactive and they can actually jump over to that product. Now, we have a lot of awesome tools at our disposal for this, but it's not as easy as just dumping a bunch of images and videos on the page. There's serious considerations that we need to consider when we're actually deploying these experiences. Without considering that impact, we could put a lot of bandwidth weight and a lot of unnecessarily load on people's devices. Severely slowing down their page hurts their experience, but it also hurts conversion rates. If you're not familiar, conversion rate is the percentage of your traffic that's actually going to buy something. There are a ton of studies how website speed actually directly correlates to the conversion rate. where eBay, for instance, found that a 0.5% increase in their conversion rate with a 100 millisecond load time improvement. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but eBay is worth over $10 billion. So just hypothetically thinking about this as an example, 0.5% of 1 billion is 5 million. So that adds up really quickly for a company that size. That means that while all your video and imagery are going to help provide a better user experience, the media is going to take up a vast majority of that page size. So if we don't pay attention to how we're actually delivering it, we're going to bloat the pages and destroy our conversion rates. So what can we actually do to help optimize that experience? Well, let's take a look at some examples of images. We're starting off, JPEG is a pretty great option, and it's a pretty old option as well, but there's a lot of more modern formats that can help deliver high quality images at greatly reduced sizes. WebP and AVIF are two of those options, and depending on the image, can bring some drastic reductions in size. We can also compress our images to the point where we're not actually impacting the visual quality. Maybe it won't matter for this tiny little thumbnail that you see on the screen, but we've learned that we want to display these images big and beautiful, right? So being able to display them that big, we want to make sure that we're able to still compress them to a point that it's not going to hurt that. So letting tech automatically decide how much to optimize it without hurting that visual difference is going to be the route that we want to take, where we're not over-optimizing, but we're also not wasting precious kilobytes in size. Now, if you want to work with high quality imagery, your source files might be absolutely huge. If you serve them as is, your browser is going to have to resize them down anyway, so you're just wasting bandwidth for your users. Resize to the actual sizes that you need and use them responsively. That way you're not trying to crunch down one single image to get the size that you need. You'll end up with super blurry images or pixelated images if you try to get it too small. So modern delivery can actually do this on the fly. That way you can specify the exact size you need for all the different use cases that you need. Now, bringing this all together, this is just an example. All these were examples I got from Unsplash. So of course that they're a little bit extreme of examples, but we can see that using modern formats and letting tech automatically optimize our images and serving just the sizes that we need for our app, we were able to slash this particular example down from 4.3 megabytes to 51.2 kilobytes. That's super drastic, and it was all without sacrificing quality. Now, these are all great options, but how can we make sure that we are doing everything we can? Luckily, there's a lot of tools out there to help us out, from inspecting our sites to actually helping build our sites. You may have already heard of web.dev, but it's a site from Google with a ton of awesome educational resources. On top of that, they have a tool to help measure your website, including things like SEO, accessibility, and what we're talking about today, performance. Well, this is just a simple example of the results. We can see that they inspect the media on the page and they try to see if we're conforming to the best practices that we've been talking about. If we're not, they let us know what's wrong. Like here, we're not taking advantage of modern formats and we're serving our images way too big than we need for the page. A similar tool meant specifically for media is Cloudinary's website image analysis tool. Like web.dev's measure tool, it'll help review your site and check out how you're actually serving your media. It will show you exactly what media is costing you those precious resources and what opportunities you actually have to fix it. Like here, we can see the benefits from serving our images in those modern formats, like we saw in my example earlier. For actually trying to implement some of these tips, I talked about responsive behaviors, and we have Responsive Breakpoint Generator, which is a project that was created by media experts that was sponsored by Cloudinary. Not only does it generate the code snippets that you can actually use in practice, it serves as an educational resource for how responsive images actually work on the web. So enough of looking at a bunch of pictures. I already made that joke, didn't I? Let's dive into some real code to see how this is actually working. So let me switch my screen, and I'm going to give a quick demo. I think I skipped a little too far, but that's okay. Let me get my screen size again. I'm at 19%, and I thought this was going to charge it. So if I have to go to my bag quick, that's why. Why is it not giving me my resolution I need? Okay, so I thought this was going to be able to change my resolution, but bear with me. If it's too small, please shout so that I can make it bigger. So we're going to start off with this very simple website that I created, which is just a bunch of images on a page. It's using a tool called Astro, which is another JavaScript framework that people can use to build static sites. But ultimately, the goal of this here is just to simply get some images on the page so I can show you all how this is actually working in practice. Now, last night, I cloned this repository and created a new one called DevReach, where this is just for my demo today so that I wasn't actually manipulating the original one. But this is what we're going to start off. And what our goal is, we're going to deploy this to Netlify, which is an image hosting deployment product, which is pretty cool. And then we're going to see how we can have a difference of those images that are getting deployed, both before and then with Cloudinary using those auto-optimization techniques that we talked about earlier. So to start, I have my repository with all my code. I'm going to head over to Netlify, and I'm going to click Add New Site, which if you haven't seen Netlify before, this is pretty cool as well. But I'm going to go ahead and select my repository, DevReach. GitHub API is apparently a little slow. But once this page loads, the cool thing about Netlify is they're going to try to detect what project or what framework you're actually using, and they're going to automatically configure it, so you don't have to do anything otherwise than come down here and click Deploy Site. So that's what I'm going to do, and this usually happens relatively quickly, but we're going to give a minute or two for how this is actually going to work. But in the meantime, let me look up Cloudinary plugin. What we're going to end up installing after I show this original is the Netlify plugin for Cloudinary that I put together, which what it's going to do is it's going to automatically add blanket optimization for all your media assets. And we'll see why that's important in a second here. But let's go back here. So what's happening in the background is Netlify is now taking that project that I just connected, is cloning it down onto their server. It's already available for us, but they're going to build that site and they're also going to deploy it. So if I now look at this on the web, we can see that I just deployed this new version of my website, and I did it in those, 1 minute? But that's, aside from being mind-blowingly cool about what Netlify is doing in the background, what we're interested here is the images. So if I refresh the page, I'm going to keep my network panel open here. Try to pay attention to some of these things that we're loading. So I talked about JPEG earlier and how we have more modern formats, but also try to keep track of the size here. And I'm going to be able to show this later, so you don't have to try to write all these sizes down to try to memorize them. But this is what we're going to be looking at as I'm going through my example. So if I head back to Netlify, what we're going to do, not click that, is install the plugin. So I'm going to head over to the Plugins tab, go to the Plugins directory. I'm going to search for Cloudinary. I'm going to install the plugin, and I want to select the site that I want to install it on, which is that visionary unicorn that I just created. So now it's installed, and I have one thing left to do, and I just need to configure my Cloudinary cloud name. That way, Netlify knows what account to actually associate all these images with. So I'm going to head over to Site Settings. I'm going to go to Build and Deploy, Environment, and please let me know if I'm going too fast. But I'm going to set my Cloudinary cloud name as an environment variable, and then I'm going to specify my cloud name, which you can find, looks like it snoozed, which inside of your Cloudinary dashboard, you can find that cloud name right at the top of your dashboard on your account details. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to head back over and paste it into my environment, save that, and now I have only one thing left to do, and that's go back to my site overview or my deploys page, and I'm going to trigger a new deploy. So what's actually happening under the hood is Netlify provides these things called build plugins that lets you hook into that build process, whether it's before, during, or after. That way you can trigger additional functionality based on that build. So what we're doing, and I'm getting my low battery, so while I'm explaining this, so what we're doing in the background is with this Cloudinary plugin, we're saying that we want to find all the assets that are being delivered, and we want to turn them into Cloudinary delivered assets. That way we can take advantage of all those auto optimizations. Good, sorry for this, but at least we can watch and you can see the output, right? It's a nice little benefit. Okay, perfect. So in that time, we can see that the build now completed, and you're able to go through those logs and see everything that you want. But ultimately, we want to see what happened now after we ran that plugin, right? So I'm going to open that in a new tab, open up my network panel, and just to note, like if we refresh the page, we can see that this looks exactly the same, right? But if we open up the network panel and reload the page, if you're paying close enough attention, you might see a little bit of a difference here. First of all, the type, we're seeing AVIF for all those images, right? That's going to be that modern format that I was talking about. But if you were double paying attention, we can see that the sizes are very different too. Now, I have this side by side in my tab so that we can look at it. But if I go back and forth, try to identify at least like one of those images where here, the beach, we can see it was originally 566 kilobytes. If we go back, we can see that it's now 125 kilobytes. That's a drastic reduction in size just by installing this plugin. And this is only adding that auto optimization. This isn't resizing the images and doing more things that you can do to help load those images. The cool thing, and sorry, I'm catching my breath a little bit from getting nervous putting that in, but if I open this site inside of Safari, one of the interesting things about the web is not all browsers support all those modern formats. So particularly, Safari doesn't actually support AVIF, but we can still see that it's loading, right? So what they're going to actually do, we can see that all these types, can you actually see it? Is it big enough? We can see that all these images, except for one, are being served as WebP. So what Cloudinary is actually doing in the background, once it's being delivered from Cloudinary, it's determining the best format for that particular browser on the fly. So it's only going to serve those images in the format most modern and most efficient for your particular device, which is awesome. As you can see, JPEG must have been still the best bet, the most efficient bet for this particular image, because it all depends on the different image, right? Like different images have different ways of optimizing. And I'm not into the image science of that part, but you can imagine how it's going to vary between the different images, and that's why you get different results. But ultimately, it can support whatever browser supports those different formats. Now, let's take this a step further. Do we have time to take this a step further? We have time to take this a step further. Okay, so one of the cool things about once you're on Cloudinary is you have a lot of additional options, such as image analysis and things like that. And you know, the plugin is still pretty basic. I want to keep building on it, but one of the things that you can do is use what's called upload presets. And what that means is when I upload using that preset, I'm telling Cloudinary specific things that I want to occur to those images when I actually upload them. Now, if we go back to my Cloudinary account, and I go to my media library, one thing the plugin also does is it's not going to try to re-upload those images that were already uploaded. So I'm going to actually delete all these images so that I'm forcing them to re-upload so that I can take advantage of that upload preset. So that's clean and we're ready to go. But now I want to create that upload preset. So I'm going to head over to settings and I'm going to go all the way down, not to that page, to upload, where if I scroll down, I can see that I can create one of these upload presets, and let's call this DevReach, where we have a lot of options for things that we can do, such as what if I want to keep all these assets organized rather than dumping them in the root, I can put them in a DevReach folder. And what else can we do? We have a lot of different things such as invalidation or maybe access controls that we can do. But one of the things that I think is coolest, if we go to this media analysis and AI, one thing I can do is I can add a DevReach tag to every single image. That way, if I'm in my DAM, which is a digital asset manager, I can search for DevReach and all these images are automatically going to come up. But taking that a step further even, I can use automatic tagging, where particularly I'm going to use Google for this example, where they're going to use the Vision AI API from Google to analyze that image and automatically add tags to all those images based off of what's in the photo. And we'll see what that looks like in a second here. But this is an add-on, so you would have to add it under the add-ons. I already have it enabled for here, but there's a free tier so you can play around with this. But for now, I'm going to click Save and head back to my dashboard. Now with the upload preset, this is going to require a different kind of configuration. Before, we installed this via the UI. So I was able to install the UI, I was able to add the environment variable, and I was able to deploy that. But now we need to configure a little bit differently so that we can do this. And we're going to use Netlify's file-based configuration to do that. So if I'm going to scroll down, I'm going to find one of those examples where we're going to use the upload, where see I can specify my upload preset. And to do that, I need to create that Netlify file. So inside of my code, make this bigger for y'all, I'm going to create what's called a netlify.toml file, which is my file-based configuration for my Netlify project. And I'm going to copy this example here. Now, we already specified our cloud name. Optionally, you can specify that cloud name inside of this file if you prefer, but we already have it there, and we're going to actually add more environment variables, so I'm going to leave it there for now. So I'm going to get rid of that line, but we're going to set our delivery type to upload, meaning that we want all those images to be uploaded instead of just fetched on the fly. But then we're going to specify that upload preset, and we're going to call it DevReach, which I specified inside of Netlify. Now, what I just need to do is one last thing is add those environment variables that I talked about. So also on your dashboard, you have your API key and your API secret. So if I head over to Netlify, I'm going to go to Site Settings, Build and Deploy, Environment, where I'm going to add those additional variables. So first we have the API key. I'm going to add my Cloudinary API key and set that value, and my Cloudinary API secret. Cloudinary API secret, and set that value as well, and click Save. But now, another cool thing about Netlify is as soon as I add these files, file-based config, and I push these changes out to my GitHub repository, because GitHub is synced up, this project is synced up to this site. If I refresh this page, we can see that it automatically kicked off a new deploy. Now, if you haven't heard of Netlify, I'm a fanboy just because it's such a cool thing. There's other providers that do a similar thing, but it's just a really great way to build the web, being able to do it this easily. Anyways, we can see that it's starting up, and just like before, it should only take a minute. But now what's happening in the background is instead of just trying to find out where the Netlify image is located, it's going to upload these images to Cloudinary. And because we specified that upload preset, as I mentioned, we're going to add those additional steps on the Cloudinary side so that we're taking those additional actions. So let's see what's happening here. Refresh the page. It's published. So if I refresh the page, we shouldn't really notice anything on the deployed site because we're not actually changing what these images look like. But if I now go back over to Cloudinary, I head over to my media library, we can now see that I do have that folder site. And if I look inside of here, we can see that I have all these different images, but that's not what's interesting. If I double click in and I start to click on the metadata, we can see we have all these tags. And let me see if I can blow this up. Okay, so I got rid of the image. Is that visible back there enough? Okay, so if we look at, this is a picture of a city, right? First of all, we have that static DevReach tag that I wanted to add, but we also see all these other things that describe this image, such as world, buildings, skyscraper. These are all things that Google's Vision AI was able to find in that image and add it as a tag automatically. Now, this is just generally cool, right? But imagine if you're managing all these assets, thousands of different images, and you want to find a particular image. It can be really hard to do that if you don't have something to search on. So this is a good way to provide those capabilities. And looking at another example, this one is of the Earth with a satellite. We can see astronomical object. We see space station. We see liquid, world, atmosphere. These are all things describing the image so that we can easily find it. Or a mountain. But now if I click X here, we can see what that actually looks like in practice, where if I search for mountain, we can see that that tag comes up where I can select that. And not showing any images with the tag mountain. That doesn't make sense. I'm not sure what's going on there. Anyways, what would actually happen in practice is all those images with the tag of mountain would show up. Again, I'm not sure why they're not, but let's try a different one. That doesn't make sense. Maybe there's a bug in the search that I'll have to report. But in practice, what's going to happen is you saw that those tags came up. When you search the tag, it's going to show all the images that have that tag. So that's a pretty simple feature, right? But because we have those tags, we can do that. Okay, so now back to my slides. There we go. Okay. So just to quickly recap, we saw how easily we were able to optimize all these images and how we were able to take that a step further by automatically adding tags to all those images. And we were able to see how the optimizations were able to directly fix the page load issues that we saw with those huge images and where we can help deliver a better experience to our users. If we pay more attention to the media that we're delivering, we're not going to only be able to deliver more responsible experiences, but we're also helping ourselves, giving us more opportunity for conversion. Now, speaking of e-commerce, if you want to learn more about building an e-commerce store, I have a course on Egghead that you can check out. We'll walk through building a shop with Next.js, Snipcart, and GraphCMS, including optimizing with Cloudinary, but I'll include a link in my talk notes, or you can find it on Egghead. And that's it. If you want to learn more, chat up at the talk, or have any questions, you can find me everywhere at Colby Fayock. Also tweet out a link later, but happy to answer any questions now. Thank you.